Diana had defeated the Tetracide and saved Gateway City, but her celebration was cut short as a giant hand pulled her back down into the Underworld. Welcome to the Comicstorian Complete Story Series, where you get audio dramas of your favorite comic books, helping you decide what to go out and add to your collection. Today, we see what happened to Diana after her hard-fought battle with the Tetracide in Absolute Wonder Woman Issue 6 by Kelly Thompson. I hope you enjoy. Diana finds herself in the throne room of Hades, Lord of the Underworld. Diana does not hesitate to kneel before the Lord of the Dead. "Princess, let's see that pretty face," Hades orders from his throne. His body is a swirling wisp of god particles, on whose head hovers a red crown. Diana does not protest and removes her war helm. "Lovely. Princess, you cannot leave the Underworld," he tells her. Diana smiles and raises her head slightly, staring at the fearsome god. "Except I did," she says softly. Hades' eyes smolder for a moment as he glares at her. "Yes, you did. And we'll be getting to how you did that in short order. But first, disarm yourself, princess," he orders. Diana motions to her armor, pointing out that she has no weapons. But Hades is no fool. He knows that as a true witch, nearly everything she is wearing is a weapon. The princess sighs and begins to unclip her armor and drop it to the floor with a clatter. "I am surprised, sire," she notes. "You are a god, and yet you fear my weapons?" But Hades waves away the notion with an air of arrogance. "Curiosity rules this more than fear, I'd say," he says, noting that Diana's tongue has been sharpened by her witch mother. Finally, Diana stands before the god, clad in only her normal clothes. She motions down to the armor that surrounds her. "Better?" she asks. But Hades shakes his head and motions to the pouch at her feet. "Do you think I can't smell an enchanted pouch? The magic coming off that thing might as well have cartoonish stink lines." "Empty it," he orders. Diana sighs again and reaches for the pouch. Magic escapes the bag as she pulls free every object. Her buster sword clatters to the ground, and she gently lays her 3 lassos next to it. Hades almost smiles at her. "Just what every growing girl needs, I see," he whispers. He looks to one of his minions and orders the creature to bring him the crimson lasso. "I'd advise against that, sire," Diana notes softly. The minion reaches for the lasso, and as its hand touches it, it suddenly bursts into flames and disappears. Diana nods at where the creature once stood. "None may wield the nemesis lasso but me, my liege," Diana explains. Hades finally leans forward and stands from his throne, walking down the steps to stand before Diana. "We would not have crafted such dangerous weapons in such a dangerous place unless we could be certain they would not be misused by others," Diana further explains. Hades stares down at the 3 lassos. "You and your mother have been busy," he notes. Diana smiles again, pointing out that living in a dangerous place forces one to use weapons as a second nature. "Tell me what this nemesis lasso is made from," Hades orders. Diana's smile falters as she thinks of her time on the Isle with her mother. She explains that as a child, Cersei would send her on errands for simple weeds and plants. As she grew older, Cersei would send her on more dangerous errands for ingredients. "It was only when she sent me to Prometheus that I began to understand the true scope of my mother's vision," Diana says softly. Long ago, lightning cracks in the distance as Diana pulls herself up Mount Prometheus. Rain pelts down on her bare arms as she struggles up the side of the mountain, wishing to remain invisible to the eyes of whatever god might be watching. Finally, she reaches the place where Prometheus is chained, pinned to the side of the mountain and awaiting the punishment that was ever close. Diana stares at the giant god for a moment before unhooking the great axe from her back. She holds the blade out and slices gently along her arm, casting a spell with her blood and blessing the weapon. Prometheus looks up as the weapon begins to glow, noticing the warrior for the first time. Diana holds the weapon aloft. "I ask your forgiveness, Lord Prometheus," she calls, shouting over the rumbling of nearby thunder. Diana takes a step and heaves the weapon, sending it across the plateau and crashing through the imprisoned god's chains. Prometheus stares at her for a moment before retrieving the weapon and handing it back to her. Diana kneels before him. "Forgiveness for my inadequacy. I confess I have not the power to free you permanently, but I thought a respite might be welcome," she asks. Prometheus smiles down at her. "It is indeed, princess," he rumbles. The two look up as an eagle approaches, prepared to enact Prometheus's punishment. But Diana calls out to the bird. It lands on her arm, and she asks that it take a break from eating at Prometheus. The eagle screeches softly at her, and Diana nods. "Ah, thank you, sister. You will have the thanks and friendship of Diana, witch of the Wild Isle, for all my days." Diana whispers before the eagle leaps and flies away. Once more alone, Diana turns back to the god, who smiles at her. "Cersei has been clever. I am happy to see that she's not lost a step since becoming trapped in the Underworld. I am even happier to see that her daughter is much the same," Prometheus tells her as he sits and relaxes. But Diana admits that she has come to the mountain for a reason. Prometheus nods. "Well, princess, ask for your boon," he tells her. Diana holds out a vial and kneels before Prometheus, confessing that she needs a vial of his blood so that she and her mother may create a weapon that will only be used in the service of protecting humanity from monsters and even the gods, should it come to that, she whispers. Prometheus ponders for a moment before placing his hand before Diana, ordering her to strike him and cleave a small piece of his finger, so that her weapon might be powered by his flesh and blood. Diana thanks him as she stands and takes up her axe, slicing through the tip of his finger. "Bless this offering of flesh and blood in Hecate's name," she whispers as she picks up the piece and places it in her bag. Next, she holds up the vial and fills it with the draining blood. "May it bring justice to the world, as Prometheus so divines. The blood of Prometheus, god of fire, fire of life. We thank you for your sacrifice," she whispers. But Prometheus is not done. He points to where his blood has spilled. Fire erupts, and a skeletal horse pulls itself from the earth. "Diana, my last gift to you," Prometheus says, introducing her to the reborn Pegasus. Pegasus, like so many, has been radicalized by injustice. "You will make a fine pair," Prometheus tells her. He bids her a fond farewell, wishing her to take leave before his punishment begins anew. Diana nods and mounts Pegasus and flies away. Now, in Hades' throne room, Diana finishes her tale. The god of the Underworld nods and looks down at the lasso, noting that he can sense far more power than from just Prometheus. Diana admits that it was also made from the last basilisk. "You killed the last basilisk?" Hades questions, and Diana begins another tale. Zeus was displeased with Cersei and Diana, and so had sent the last basilisk to try and kill them many times. But this time, Diana had tracked the creature to its lair. She crept inward, aware that to look into the eyes of the basilisk is death. But Diana had taken precaution, and she had taken her eyesight with magic. The creature looked into her sightless eyes and realized that its gaze would have no power. "Princess," the monster hissed. But Diana was ready and knew of the basilisk's weakness to exploit. In addition to removing her sight, she also removed her sense of smell and threw a magical vial at the basilisk, overwhelming its senses. It roared with pain and prepared to strike, but Diana met its attack and used her weapon to cleave the head from its body. Hades returns to his throne. "The last basilisk," he whispers as he sits heavily. Finally, he leans forward. His eyes smolder once more as he glares at Diana. "This has all been very educational," he says. He waves a hand and something drops out of the darkness from above, dangling in spectral chains. Diana's eyes widen in shock and horror as she looks up at her mother. Cersei, her mouth clasped in iron, is trapped in the chains. "Mother?" Diana whispers as tears begin to form in her eyes. Hades leans back on his throne. "Ah, at last. No more smart remarks from that too-sharp tongue of yours," he says. "We all have weaknesses, Princess. Yours was quite easy to pinpoint." And that's where issue 6 leaves us. Diana thought she had pulled one over on the god of the underworld, only to learn that the god had plans of his own. How will Diana save her mother? And will she be able to escape the underworld once more? We'll find out next time. But let me know your thoughts on today's video in the comments below. And of course, like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, as it helps the channel out a lot. I'm Dan with Comicstorian, and we will see you next time. Rest in peace, Benny.